This is a story from 1905. I'm here to introduce it. My name is Hamilton Holt. I had this idea around 1905 that everyone has a story to tell. The lady you're about to meet has a secret, which is that she likes to read. This is a real person. Her name is anonymous. I published her story in 1905 and I put it in a book in 1906. She wrote it by herself. She makes me feel like I'm really on the farm with her.
In early spring, we are planting potatoes, making plant beds, planting garden, early corn patches, setting strawberries, planting corn, melon, cowpeas, sugar cane, beans, popcorn, peanuts.
Some of her words you won't hear today because it's not practical for us to include all of them.
Later in June, we harvest timothy hay, in August, clover hay, and in July, pea hay.
I like hearing about the kinds of hay.
I have been a farmer's wife in one of the states of the Middle West for 13 years.
That's her. Those are her words from 1905.
Everybody knows that the farmer's wife must of a necessity be a very practical woman if she is to be a successful one.
That word, practical, it seems important.
I am not a practical woman, and consequently have been accounted a failure by practical friends, and especially by my husband, who is wholly practical.
Why did you marry him?
We are told that the mating of people of opposite natures breeds intellectuality in the offspring, but
Tell me.
I think that happy homes are of more consequence than the precocity of children.
I agree.
When people of opposite tastes get married, there's a discordant note runs through the entire married life. It's only a question of which one has the stronger will in determining which tastes will predominate.
Why did you marry him?
In our case, my husband has the stronger will. He is innocent of book learning, is a natural hustler who believes the only way to earn an honest living is by digging it out of the ground. He has an inherited tendency to be miserly, loves money for the sake of money rather than for its purchasing power.
You help him.
No man can run a farm by himself without someone to help him, and I have always been called upon and expected to help do anything that a man can do. He had no thought of hiring a man to help him, since I could do anything for which he needed help.
Ever worked before you married?
When I was 12 years old, I was appointed Sunday school teacher, a position I proudly held until the age of 18 when I got married.
You earned a teacher's certificate.
I was an apt student at school, and before I was 18, I had earned a teacher's certificate and gladly would have remained in school a few years longer, but
Yes.
I had unwittingly agreed to marry the man who is now my husband. And though I begged to be released, his will was so much stronger than mine, and I was unable to free myself without wounding a loving heart.
Ah,
I could not find it in my nature to do so.
that is hard.
All through life, I have found my dislike for giving offense to be my undoing. When we were married and moved away from my home church, I fain would have joined the church of my new residence, but my husband did not like to go to church, and rather than have my right hand give offense, I cut it off.
What about your passion?
I always had a passion for reading. In young girlhood, it was along educational lines. In young womanhood, it was for love stories. Although that remained ungratified because my father thought it sinful to read stories of any kind, and especially love stories. Later when I married, I borrowed everything I possibly could in the line of novels and stories, and read them by stealth still. For my husband thought it a willful waste of time to read anything, and that it showed a lack of love for him if I would rather read than talk to him when I had a few moments of leisure. And in order to avoid giving offense and still gratify my desire, I would only read when he was not at the house. I got glimpses now and then of the great poets and authors, which aroused a great desire for me for a thorough perusal of them all. But up till the present time, I have not been permitted to satisfy this desire. It is only during the last few years that I have had the news to read, for my husband is so very penurious that he would never consent to subscribing to papers of any kind.
You have time to read?
All the season, from the coming in of the first fruits until the making of mincemeat at Christmas. I put up canned goods for future use, gather in many bushels of field beans and the other crops usually raised on the farm, make sauerkraut, ketchup, pickles, etc. This is a vague, general idea of how I spend my time. My work is so varied that it would be difficult indeed to describe a typical day's work. Any bright morning in May, I'm up at 4:00 a.m. Next, after I have dressed and combed my hair, I start a fire in the kitchen stove. And while the stove is getting hot, I go to my flower garden and gather a half-blown rose and a spray of bride's wreath and arrange them in my hair.
You put a flower in your hair.
And sweep the floors and then cook breakfast. While the other members of the family are eating breakfast, I strain away the morning's milk and fill my husband's dinner pail. By this time, it is 5:30.
In the morning.
My husband has gone to work, and the stock loudly pleading to be turned into the pastures. The younger cattle are left in the pasture at night, and I now drive the 2 cows a half-quarter mile and turn them in with the others, come back, and then there's a horse in the barn that belongs in a field where there is no water, which I take to a spring quite a distance from the barn, bring it back and turn it into a field with the sheep, who are housed at night. The young calves are then turned out into the warm sunshine, and the stock hogs are clamoring for feed. It is perhaps 6:30 a.m. I have not yet eaten breakfast.
6:30 a.m.
But that can wait. I make the beds next and straighten the living room. When this is done, I go to the kitchen and uncover the table and take a mouthful of food occasionally as I pass to and fro. By the time the work is done in the kitchen, it is now about 7:15 a.m., and the cool morning hours have flown and no hoeing done in the garden yet. Finally, the children are washed and the churning done, and it is 8:00 and the sun getting hot, but no matter, weeds die quickly when cut down in the heat of the day.
She describes getting the dinner on, and when the cows get loose, and transplanting hundreds of plants, and taking care of the horses and the sheep and the chickens, repairing a fence, preparing supper.
When we are through eating, I make the beds ready, and the children and their father go to bed, and I wash the dishes and get things in shape to get breakfast ready quickly the next morning. It is now about 9:00 p.m., and after a short prayer, I retire for the evening.
How much time do you have for reading?
Fully half of my time is devoted to helping my husband. Only a very small portion of my time is devoted to reading. I think I will stay home on Sunday and read, but we have many visitors on Sunday and I am generally disappointed. I sometimes visit my friends on Sunday because they are so insistent that I should, though I would prefer spending the day reading. I have never had a vacation, but if I should be allowed one, I should certainly be pleased to spend it in an art gallery. As winter draws nigh.
Oh, let's not talk about winter now.
I have always had an itching to write.
Yes?
And with all my multitudinous cares, I have written for several papers, which do not pay, just because I was pleased to see my articles in print. Though my husband says I will break him up buying so much writing material, by hook and crook, I keep up with my letter writing. I pay for it out of my own scanty income. I am proud of my children.
I know you are.
I must admit that there is very little time for the higher life for myself, but my soul cries out for it, and my heart is not in my homely duties. They are done in a mechanical, abstract way. My ambitions are along other lines. I do not mean to say that I have no ambition to be a model housewife, for I would scorn to slight my work intentionally. It is just this way. There are so many outdoor activities that the time left for household duties is so limited that I must rush through them, with a view to getting each one done in the shortest possible time, in order to get as many things accomplished as possible. For there is never time to do half the things that need to be done.
Oh, there is never time.
All the time that I have been going about this work, I have been thinking of things I have read, and of other things which I have a desire to read, but cannot hope to while the present condition exists. As a natural consequence, there are daily numerous instances of absent-mindedness on my part. Many things left undone that I really could have done by leaving off something of less importance, if I had not forgotten the thing of the more importance. My husband never fails to remind me that it is caused by my reading so much, that I would get along much better if I were never to see a book or paper. Well, really, I would be distracted if all reading matter were taken from me. I suppose it's impossible for a woman to do her best in everything, but I really would like to. I almost cut sleep out of my routine. And when the work for the day is over and the family are all asleep and no one to forbid it, I spend a few hours writing or reading.
How did you convince your husband to agree to your taking a short story writing class?
It was on condition that the venture was to be kept profoundly secret, for he felt certain there would be nothing but failure. He desired that no one should know of it and have cause for ridicule. I had to promise my husband that I would drop all my papers, periodicals, etc. I hoped to accomplish something worthy of note in a literary way, since I have been a failure in all other things. My motto has always been, strive to excel.
You're not a failure.
When critical housewives spend a day, I always feel like I am receiving a mental criticism from them. But money is king. And if I might turn my literary bent to account and surround myself with the evidence of prosperity.
Thank you, Anonymous. And however that short story writing class turned out, know that your name is famous throughout the ages for many important contributions.
I may yet fully hope to redeem myself.